Imagine waking up one day and noticing that the voice inside your head has picked up an accent that isn't yours. Not a literal one, more like a rhythm, a timing, a way of phrasing your own feelings as if they were captions waiting to be posted. Your thumb reaches for the rectangle of light before your eyes are fully open, as if the body knows a prayer the mind forgot. The screen blooms to life. Your heart gives a small, involuntary flicker. Something is already thinking you before you think anything. You don't know its name, but it knows yours. It knows how long you pause on a face, which colors soften your shoulders, which headlines condense the space in your chest. It knows what reels you. It knows what holds you. It knows more than it should. You are told this is freedom, endless choice, infinite connection, the world in your pocket like a domesticated god. But the freedom tastes like a sugar you can't stop eating, leaving you hungrier. You are the audience and the product. The place you go to be yourself is also the place where yourself is split, weighed, and traded. How can you tell the difference between choosing what you love and loving what you are engineered to choose? When did the door you walk through to connect with the world become a two-way mirror, watching you watch? The feed is personal, intimate, braiding your memories, jokes, anxieties, and politics into a stream tailored just for you. It feels like a gift. Yet gifts usually come with cards, and this one comes with a contract you never signed. It edits your mornings. The first emotion of the day isn't yours. It's delivered. A photograph inserts a small envy into you. A headline sprinkles outrage. A friend's announcement leaves a faint ache that masquerades as inspiration. You tell yourself you're just catching up, but who is catching whom? The infinite scroll is a staircase you never notice descending until the air changes and you realize you are somewhere you didn't mean to go. There's an old paradox buried in this new glass. You've never had more ways to express yourself, and yet your voice has never felt more choreographed. You think you are deciding what to post, when to reply, how to react, but your decisions walk on tracks laid by invisible hands. The emojis have trained your face. The metrics have trained your mood. If your joy is brighter when it performs well, if your grief is softer when it doesn't, what does that say about who is piloting your inner weather? If a laugh happens off camera, does it count? If no one sees your sunset, did the sky really burn? Notice the subtle ghost that appears each time you hold the phone, the version of you that exists on the other side of the glass. That ghost is efficient, distilled. It is you, minus your doubts, your stumbles, your silences. It is your highlight reel, your public shadow. You can feel the friction between this ghost and the person who forgets what they were going to say, who sits at the edge of the bed without words, who longs for a room where the curtains breathe freely. Which one are you trying to satisfy? Which one is hungry? And which one is starving? And who taught you to measure your worth in proofs that vanish after 24 hours? At some point, the day collapses into a sequence of little lever pulls. You tell yourself, just one more, a sentence designed like a slot machine. The reward is always almost, always maybe, and your nervous system leans forward like a gambler with a pocket of coins. You call it boredom relief, then you call it connection, then you call it research, news, networking, community. But if the same motion feeds every need, is it meeting any? If a single faucet promises to satisfy thirst, hunger, loneliness, and curiosity, what is it pouring into you? Here is the strangest part. The longer you scroll, the less you feel that you're scrolling. The more you perform, the less you feel that you're performing. It becomes the way the day breathes. The phone is no longer an object. It is the prosthetic organ for your attention, the place where your thoughts stop to check how they're doing. And yet, who asked your consent to wire your attention into a marketplace? When did your curiosity become a commodity? If your pauses can be bought and sold, do you still own your pauses? Imagine the quiet of a pre-internet evening. A book, a window, the wind like a second hand moving through leaves. Now imagine how quickly the quiet feels like abandonment. No ping, no glow, and your body hums with a question. What am I missing? The paradox tightens. You joined to belong. Belonging now feels like a task. You came to be seen. Being seen now obscures the parts of you that cannot be captured. You came to connect. Connection now burns through you faster than solitude can heal you. If your sense of self depends on being constantly reflected back, how do you know where you end and the feed begins? So the great question rises, urgent and impolite. Who is thinking your thoughts? Who is speaking in your voice? What part of you is choosing, and what part has been chosen? There is no villain in the room, only a very clever machine doing exactly what it was built to do, and a very ancient animal, your mind, doing exactly what it evolved to do. But when these two meet, something combustible happens. If you feel that your life is becoming a highlight reel you manage, rather than a reality you inhabit, it may be because an unseen gravity is shaping you. To understand that gravity, to see how your consciousness is nudged, stretched, and siphoned, we have to follow it backward, into the architecture of appetites, into the psychology of attention, into the cultural myths that made it possible for a screen to become a mirror that eats. Ready to step behind the glass? Step behind the glass, and the first thing you notice is that nothing here is neutral. The room is furnished for an experiment you never agreed to run, with yourself as both subject and data. The hidden problem isn't your lack of willpower or a generational attention deficit. It's an economy built on your gaze, a marketplace where your curiosity is the raw material and your identity is the product line. If your attention can be harvested, why wouldn't someone plant the field? And if the harvest depends on your staying just a little uncertain, just a little hungry, why would they ever let you feel full? Your brain is not a camera. It is a prediction machine, ceaselessly trying to reduce surprise. Dopamine is not pleasure. It's the chemical tag your nervous system uses to say, pay attention, this might matter. The feed is engineered to trigger that tag with exquisite timing. Variable rewards, a Skinner box made of velvet, a slot machine disguised as your friends. Each maybe becomes a little spark of learning, a micro wager of attention. You pull the lever because the next post might be the one, funny enough, infuriating enough, validating enough to justify the last 50. The algorithm isn't just forecasting your behavior, it's training your expectations. It shapes the map your brain uses to decide what counts as worth noticing. And once salience is captured, choice follows. How can you choose what to value if your sense of value has already been tuned? But the trap deepens. You are not merely a private prediction engine. You are a social animal spinning through a web of eyes. Long before phones, we built selves out of reflection. Charles Cooley called it the looking glass self, the tendency to see ourselves in the judgments we imagine others hold. Social media operationalizes that ancient mirror into a real-time scoreboard. Irving Goffman's stage, the one where you manage impressions, no longer closes its curtains. Contexts collapse. Your boss, your lover, your childhood friend, the stranger with 10 million followers, all watch the same performance. How do you speak when every room is the same room? You turn to the persona, Jung's name for the mask you wear in public. The feed rewards the mask, coherence, polish, certainty. Meanwhile, the shadow, those disowned moods, confusions, contradictions, must go somewhere. Repressed, it returns through side doors. Sarcasm, envy, compulsive consumption, sudden rage at strangers. If the algorithm is allergic to your ambiguity, will you ever give your complexity permission to exist? Sartre said we become an object in the eyes of the other. Under the look, we forget our freedom and begin to act for the gaze. Now the gaze is everywhere, disembodied and measurable. A number sits where a face should be. Likes, views, shares. And the number becomes a moral weather report. The temptation of bad faith grows. You start living as if your essence were a profile, as if your worth were the graph of a week's engagement. When a post dies, a small part of you feels exiled. When a story surges, you feel absolved. A superego made of metrics takes residence in your head and keeps score. Whose judgments are you obeying? And what happens to your capacity for free choice when the audience inside you never stops clapping or booing? René Girard argued that our desires are mimetic. We copy what others want, and through imitation, rivals are born. The feed is a mimetic engine. It shows you not merely objects, but the glittering desire attached to them. You don't just see a pair of shoes. You see the velocity of attention around those shoes, the shine of wanting itself. You don't just see a body, you see the social temperature attached to that body. Desire becomes contagious, then competitive, then weaponized. The algorithm discovers what stirs the tribe and amplifies it, because contagion is engagement. How much of what you think you want is borrowed? How much of your ambition is a reflection of a reflection, a hall of mirrors that turns a life into a series of borrowed cravings? Nietzsche warned of the herd, of a comfort that masquerades as virtue, and the resentment that grows when we cannot admit our envy. The feed translates these currents into trend lines. Outrage gathers because it performs well. Moralism thrives because it is measurable. The will to power becomes the will to visibility. We become the last men, blinking at the pleasure of being unoffended, while a quiet bitterness pools underneath. Huxley anticipated a milder dystopia than Orwell's, one in which we are softened by entertainment, governed not by terror, but by appetite. The scroll is a gentle soma. It cools your alarms while keeping you tethered to the drip of almost. Schopenhauer's blind will, always pushing, never satisfied, finds in the feed a conveyor belt of not yet, each post a new hope that withers into the next. Viktor Frankl observed that when meaning is absent, people chase pleasure or power as substitutes. In the glow, metrics look like meaning. Goals you can track, progress you can display, a story you can tell yourself about why you're doing this. Yet the story is fragile because it's borrowed from a marketplace. When the numbers dip, the substitute collapses and the vacuum gapes wider. What would meaning look like without an audience? Do you remember? Meanwhile, your cognitive biases are not bugs. They are the levers. Negativity bias pulls your attention toward threat. The feed offers you a curated parade of micro-threats, each safely distant yet intimately felt. Confirmation bias hugs your existing beliefs. The feed stitches a reality tailored to your worldview so that every surprise is the pleasant surprise of being right. The availability heuristic emphasizes what you've recently seen. The feed keeps it recent forever. Social proof makes consensus feel like truth. The feed simulates consensus with numbers that glow. Scarcity heightens desire. Stories vanish after 24 hours, and you return to prove to the clock that you exist. Even your neurology participates. The amygdala perks at anger. The anterior cingulate flags errors. The prefrontal cortex, fatigued by switching and micro-decisions, eventually delegates judgment to habit. What does it mean to be free when the rails of habit are laid by a machine that profits most when you forget you're riding? And then there is the cultural scaffolding that made such a device feel natural. We were taught that choice is freedom, that voice is virtue, that to be visible is to be real. We were told to build a personal brand, to network, to scale, to be always on. In that myth, the self is a startup, the soul a product to be tested and iterated. Shoshana Zuboff called it surveillance capitalism, the monetization of human experience. If it's free, you are not the customer. But a subtler truth hides underneath. If it's free, it is training you to be product-shaped, legible to a system that optimizes for stickiness, not for sanity. So the hidden force is a braid, a business model that thrives on uncertainty, a brain tuned for patterns, a social animal starving for recognition, and a culture that confuses visibility with value. Together, they do not simply grab your attention. They retrain the organ that decides what attention is for. And that organ is your consciousness, your only instrument for living a life that is actually yours. What does this braid do when it tightens? How does it twist your days, your politics, your friendships, your sleep? What happens to a society when its members outsource their sense of salience to an algorithm that rewards heat over light? The answers are not abstract. They are in your calendar, your mood swings, your search history, the way you breathe when you reach for the glow. Let's turn from the roots to the fruit and see what grows from this soil. You don't notice the harvest until the symptoms appear. The first is small. A pause that used to be empty becomes filled. Coffee steams, your thumb checks. A friend speaks. Your eyes slide toward the glow. Just for a second, just in case. Phantom vibrations ring from a silent pocket. You realize your mind no longer rests in the room. It perches on a branch above it, scanning the air for a ping. This is the body, retuned. Your reward system has learned to expect surprise, and surprise has been scheduled for you. If attention is your life in units, this is how the units are siphoned, without a single theft feeling like theft. Neurologically, the loop is elegant. Dopamine flags potential significance. Cortisol readies you to act. The prefrontal cortex, tired from switching lanes, outsources decisions to habit. Micro-anticipation, micro-reward, micro-letdown. Repeat. The default mode network, the part of your brain that knits autobiographical meaning during idleness, gets fewer long stretches of unassigned time. Boredom, once a cradle for creativity, becomes intolerable. Without boredom, the stitches of insight loosen. The day fills with content, but the texture of your inner life thins. You feel busy without remembering what you were doing. Memory reorganizes itself under this climate. Once, your mind rehearsed stories because stories were how identity stuck. Now, you outsource narrative to a camera roll and a feed that offers anniversaries on command. On this day, returns a set of images and instructs you to remember like this. The algorithm is not neutral about your past. It resurrects what drew attention then, not what mattered quietly. The ordinary days, the ones that built your character like a slow tide shaping rock, fade because they don't perform. Your biography reconstitutes around peaks, tragedies, and applause. You start to live for what will be easy to remember, not for what is worth living. Emotionally, amplitude increases while depth diminishes. The amygdala is a shape in the dark looking for snakes. The feed supplies a safe terrarium of them. Headlines as fanged silhouettes, strangers' mistakes as hiss. Negativity bias says threat matters more than comfort, and so your nervous system learns to flinch and click. Add the illusory truth effect. Repetition makes statements feel more true, and you wake inside a world where a lie told with rhythm becomes a plausible sky. Add the Baader-Meinhof frequency illusion. You notice a concept, a symptom, a trend, a conspiracy, and suddenly the feed fills with it. It feels like the universe is winking. You imagine providence or apocalypse when what you are experiencing is personalization. How do you keep your balance when the room is arranged to tilt? Socially, the ground contracts. You find yourself narrating your life in captions. You attend your child's performance and notice the micro-urge to get a good angle. You receive sad news and feel two emotions at once: grief and the faint managerial impulse to craft an update. Friendship, once a conversation, becomes a shared link. You and your partner feel closer to each other's public ghost than to each other's private weather. In arguments, you speak in posts, quotable, certain, audience-ready. Nuance becomes expensive. The algorithm taxes hesitation. To stay legible, you harden. You learn to hold your tongue, not out of wisdom but brand protection. Self-censorship digests your courage. Metrics rewire your ethics. Anchoring, the first number you see influences all subsequent numbers, gives likes and views the power to set the price of your self-worth. Social proof, what many people appear to think feels true, turns engagement into a moral compass. Loss aversion, the pain of losing is stronger than the pleasure of gaining, makes you maintain an identity you no longer believe in because it has accrued an audience you cannot bear to lose. The Zeigarnik effect, unfinished tasks, nag, keeps you returning to check because online there is no finished. Every open thread hums. Your nights end not with exhale but with tabs left ajar, invisible strings tugging your sleep. Sleep thins. Blue light mutes melatonin. The day's outrage leaks into your dreams. The Tetris effect takes a new form. Faces and text boxes cascade behind closed eyes. You wake in the night and reach for the glow, letting cortisol pour a thin anxiety into morning. Over weeks, your allostatic load rises, stress as a permanent weather system, and you call it normal. Under fatigue, empathy narrows. Compassion becomes a performance you can barely afford. You want to care, but you are exhausted by caring. Politics turns into theater you can't stop watching. The availability heuristic makes whatever you've seen recently feel urgent. The feed ensures that the dramatic is always recent. Group polarization nudges you toward extremes, because emphatic posts outperform ambivalent ones. Outrage is rewarded. Contrition is invisible unless it can be made spectacular. The Overton window, the range of acceptable discourse, shifts to accommodate what performs. You feel informed, but your epistemic commons, the shared ground where facts are agreed upon, is burning down. A viral lie can circumnavigate your mind 3 times before a correction limps in, and by then, the lie has welded itself to identity. Are you better at understanding the world or at defending a tribe? The economy of self accelerates. For creators, the treadmill hums. Post or perish. Your value is tied to freshness, your humanity to relevance. Burnout arrives as a ghost that makes everything feel heavy. You think you are lazy. In truth, you are depleted. For everyone else, the creator mindset leaks. Every dinner is potentially content, every trip a set. You stand before a mountain and feel the sacrilege of not documenting it. Did it happen if it wasn't shared? This is the liturgy of the new church. Publish or be effaced. Even intimacy is rerouted. The still face experiment. An infant becomes distressed when a caregiver's face goes flat. Plays out 1,000 times a day as a child tugs at a sleeve while a parent scrolls. The parent's face frozen into the glow. Attachment tilts toward anxious. The other is physically near but mentally elsewhere. Lovers conduct relationships via story arcs with cliffhangers and montages. Apologies are drafted to be screenshotted. Secrets become liabilities in an ecosystem that prefers transparency as spectacle and privacy as guilt. If love is attention, what happens when attention is leased? Reality itself grows funhouse contours. Frequency illusions make coincidence feel like fate. Algorithmic echoes make your city feel angrier than it is, or safer, or sicker, or more glamorous, depending on which corner the machine has learned to monetize. Base rate neglect ensures you rarely see denominator data. How common, how likely, how representative. The world begins to look like the feed, and the parts of the world that don't look like the feed feel irrelevant. You step outside and experience a thin disappointment that the sky has no filter. The unfiltered becomes untrustworthy. And yet the most consequential shift is quieter. Your sense of agency erodes by degrees. After enough cycles, you no longer ask, "What do I want to do?" You ask, "What's happening?" Wanting the feed to tell you where meaning is today. The compass needle of salience swings toward what glows. You become an administrator of your own impulses, managing a crowd of small urgencies. Freedom becomes the option to choose between tabs. The cost is a life reactive rather than chosen. This is the trap, not a prison with bars, but a set of grooves so well worn that you mistake them for ground. The unseen consequences are not merely distraction, they are the gradual reconfiguration of what your mind thinks a life is. But grooves can be stepped out of. The machine is powerful, yes, but it is not omnipotent. It learned you, you can unlearn it. To do so, you will need something that looks like rebellion, a refusal to be legible, a reclaiming of boredom, a redirection of your hunger toward meaning that cannot be measured. Rebellion doesn't start with deletion. It starts with jurisdiction, the quiet decision to become the sovereign of your own attention. Not a Puritan vow, not a dramatic farewell post, but a shift in the center of gravity. The world can keep fluorescing, but your consciousness will no longer be rented by the hour. You felt the grooves. Now you choose where to place your feet. Begin with a paradox. You break the spell not by fighting the feed, but by building a life so textured that the feed cannot compete. Calorie counting doesn't cure hunger. A real meal does. People don't claw their way out of mimetic contagion by sheer negation. They find desires deep enough that borrowed ones feel pale. Become who you are, Nietzsche insisted, not who you can perform. The rebellion is to refasten your identity to activities that refuse to be commodified. Longer conversations, harder work, slower crafts, friendships that tolerate silence, love that is allergic to witnesses. You could call this austerity, but it is actually affection for your time, for your capacity, for the few things that justify a day. Frankl would say meaning is something you serve, not something that serves you. When you serve meaning, metrics become trivial. The likes shrivel in the light of a vocation. The rebellion is to choose a purpose that doesn't ask to be seen. Start at the edges of the day. Guard the borderlands, the first hour after waking and the last hour before sleep, as if they were the gates to a city. In the morning, refuse to let the feed write your prologue. Walk, journal, read a living book, pray, stretch, stare through a window until your mind softens. In the evening, don't let a machine decide the weather of your dreams. Candle, page, pen, breath. These bookends restore the default mode network's quiet stitching, letting your inner narrator remember your own name. You will need friction. Not discipline in the heroic sense, but architecture that makes the easy thing good and the bad thing slightly annoying. Move the icons. Remove auto login. Turn your phone grayscale. Desire loses color under soft ash. Disable anything that isn't a human trying to reach you. Leave the device in another room when you sleep. If you must use it like a scalpel. Ask, what am I here to do? Then do that and leave as if from an operating room. If the app monetizes your drift, refuse to drift there. Use the web, not the app. Use RSS, not the infinite buffet. The smallest inconveniences, a password you actually type, a browser you close, are the guardrails of a free mind. Design rituals that cannot be posted. Cook a long stew. Learn a piece of music slowly, badly, then better. Plant something and kneel before it daily. Write letters, actual paper, ink that smudges, a stamp like a tiny flag. Take walks without bringing anybody inside your pocket. Watch clouds and learn their names. These are not romantic gestures. They are neurological rewiring. Boredom becomes bearable, then fertile. Your attention lengthens. Your inner weather calms. Keats called it negative capability, the skill of abiding uncertainty without grasping. The feed annihilates negative capability. Your rituals restore it. To unwind mimetic desire, identify your models. Girard is merciless here. Much of what you want is borrowed. Whose wanting instructs yours? Make a list. Then choose your exemplars with care. Dead mentors who cannot like your posts. Craftspeople whose work would be the same with or without applause. Elders who are uninterested in performance. Adopt the dead, as some monks say. The dead don't compete with you. Also choose anti-models, the glittering cravings you refuse to inherit. When you feel the itch to want because others want, pause and ask, who is the other here? The moment you see the model, the spell loosens. Jung would tell you to make a room for your shadow. Give your contradictions a private theater where they don't have to clean up. Keep a journal that is not an archive of wisdom, but a compost pile. Scraps, shame, half-thoughts, unsorted envy, sudden tenderness. Do not sanitize it for an audience. When the shadow is heard there, it does not have to vandalize your feed. Authenticity is not transparency. It is congruence. You are allowed to be illegible to strangers. Sartre urges you to escape bad faith, the habit of living as if you were only the persona the gaze recognizes. Practice being misunderstood. Resist the urge to explain yourself to the crowd. Decline debates that exist only to generate heat. When a controversy asks for your immediate theatrical stance, try the dignity of a delayed response. Delay is not cowardice. It is stewardship of your cognition. You are not a firefighter for the internet's fires. Counterintuitive tool. Schedule solitude like a meeting with someone powerful. Because it is. An hour a week, then 2, then a day a quarter. A personal Sabbath from the economy of attention. No posting before, during, or after. You will feel the phantom limb of the feed twitch. Let it. The ache is proof of dependency. It is also proof that you are separating. Another tool, supply-side attention. Instead of waiting for the world to announce what matters, choose 3 verbs for the season. Build, tend, learn. Or teach, write, listen. Or heal, study, host. Every morning, ask how each verb moves today. Verbs generate salience from within. They immunize you against the algorithm's fabricated urgency because they give you a different clock. Rehearse joy of missing out. JOMO is not smug asceticism. It is relief at rejoining the only party that exists, presence. When the event glows, remember that what you don't attend multiplies what you do. When the story expires without your view, let it die. You are not obligated to witness every moment of the world. Build commons with your people. Announce an unscroll hour at dinner. Create group chats that share paragraphs, not screenshots. Form a small circle for long voice messages, human tone, breath, laughter, rather than medals of engagement. Try once a week posting, a newsletter of your life's internal weather rather than a stream of performances. Give each other permission not to respond quickly. Friendship is not customer support. You will relapse. Expect it. Do not turn lapses into identities. Precision matters. I broke my boundary today is different from I am broken. The latter is a story the feed would love to sell you. Nietzsche's self-overcoming is a spiral, not a straight line. Return gently. This is not about purity. It is about trajectory. If your work requires these platforms, turn them into tools. Separate creation from publication. Create offline in deep blocks, publish in bursts, then leave. Batch responses, higher friction, apps that limit, timers that darken screens, colleagues who hold you accountable. Set metrics that honor soul, not just clicks. Pages drafted, hours of undistracted study, conversations that cannot be screenshot. Treat your attention like an artisan treats wood, with respect, with patience, with a refusal to waste. And perhaps the most radical rebellion, cultivate a private life that outgrows your public one. Love someone in ways that leave no residue online. Learn a skill nobody knows you have. Keep a secret that isn't shadow but sanctuary. In an era where visibility is the counterfeit of value, privacy becomes a sacrament. This is not withdrawal from the world. It is a way of returning to it. When you reclaim your attention, colors return. The air reappears on your skin. The horizon widens. You find again that conversation is improvisation, that reading is time travel, that a walk can repair your mind more efficiently than 100 hot takes. The rebellion is not against technology per se. It is against the arrangement of your soul for profit. Do this long enough and something unexpected happens. The feed becomes less hypnotic, not because it changed, but because you did. Your inner algorithm, once trained by outside incentives, has been retrained by chosen commitments. You stop checking to see if you exist. You start acting as if you do. Here it is, the hinge on which the whole door swings. Your consciousness is not the stream of posts, not the emotions they trigger, not even the thoughts that narrate your reactions. Your consciousness is the field in which all of that appears. The feed can occupy the contents. It cannot own the container. The machine learns patterns in the waves, but it does not touch the ocean. The ultimate truth is not a technique but an identity. You are the one who attends. The tyranny is a confusion, mistaking what flows through you for what you are. Feel the difference. When you are the scroll, you are swept by it. When you are the one watching the scroll, you can choose. This is not spiritual wallpaper. It is the practical restoration of agency. If attention is the currency of your life, then the most radical move is to remember, you mint it. You decide what becomes wealth. The algorithm can predict what will move you. It cannot decree what is worthy of your movement. This recognition redraws the map. The problem was never merely distraction. It was misidentification. You thought you were the performance, the persona, the numbers glowing on a screen. You forgot that each number is a weather report, not a fate. The strange relief is that you do not need to defeat the feed at its own game. You only need to stop letting it define what the game is. Reclaiming consciousness doesn't require absence of content. It requires a presence so steady that content cannot smuggle your life away. Consider this paradox. The way out is not through isolation, but through right relation. You are not a sealed container to be protected from contamination. You are a living stream that clarifies as it flows from a deeper spring. What you give your attention to becomes your life. Attention is not neutral. It is a form of love. When you attend to rage, rage grows. When you attend to the slow hour with a friend, friendship thickens. When you attend to silence, your inner signal strengthens. The feed measures engagement, your soul measures devotion. Engagement is a spike. Devotion is a horizon. This is why all the tactics were only the warm-up. The central task is a vow, quiet, simple, enforceable, to treat attention as an ethic. Kant insisted that persons must be ends, not means. Apply that rule to your gaze. Do not treat other people as content. Refuse to scroll through their lives as if they were consumables. When you speak, speak to a person, not to an audience. When you listen, listen for the truth, not for a clip. This will feel strange because you were trained to translate everything into performance. Resist the translation, insist on encounter, and insist on the same dignity for yourself. You are not a product line, you are a living process. Your worth is not a trend, it is an inheritance you activate by choosing how to spend an hour. You will sometimes post, yes. You will sometimes share, yes, but under a different sky. You will not extract yourself from the fabric of the world. You will weave yourself into it with intention. The feed can offer a million spectacles. Meaning will always ask for your presence. Who is thinking your thoughts? You asked in the first hour. Here is the answer the rebellion prepares you to hear. The most important thoughts are not the ones that pass through uninvited. They are the ones you commission. Commission thoughts by making a promise. A promise is a private algorithm that trains your salience. Vows are how human beings sculpt consciousness. I will write each morning. I will make one true conversation each day. I will serve this craft, this community, this body. When you live by a vow, your feed becomes an accessory. It can support the vow or be silent. It cannot replace it. Philosophy has said this 100 ways. The ancients spoke of telos, an end toward which a life aims. Frankl called it meaning, the why that allows you to bear the how. Buddhists point to the witness behind the thoughts, the spaciousness in which sensations arise and pass. Phenomenologists talk about intentionality, the directedness of consciousness. Translate all of these into one practice. Choose your aim. Return to the witness. Aim again. The aim is not the algorithms, it is yours. The witness is not a theory. It is the felt sense of being the one who notices. Catch it now. Even these words appear inside a clear place that is you. When you forget, as you will, let the forgetting be your bell. The moment you notice that your thumb has wandered, ask the older question beneath the urge. What is this moment for? Not what is happening, the feed's question, but what is this for, the human question. If the answer is rest, then rest. If the answer is reaching a friend, then reach. If the answer is wonder, then step outside. You do not need to erase the world to reclaim your life. You need to restore purposes that outshine the lure of stimuli. Extend this to our shared life. A society is what it agrees to pay attention to. If we cede our gaze to markets that reward heat over light, we should not be surprised when our commons smolders. But the reverse is also true. If enough people practice a politics of attention, amplifying nuance, honoring correction, rewarding patience, refusing humiliation as entertainment, the atmosphere changes. You will feel small. You are small, as a drop is small, but many drops are weather. Become weather for someone near you. Parent with your face lifted, friend with your phone down, citizen who reads past the headline. There is no algorithm for dignity. We write it with the ways we look at each other. And then, there is the gentlest truth, the one that dissolves the whole machinery of verdicts. You do not have to be visible to be real. Trees rehearse this daily. A violinist plays in an empty room, and the air keeps the music. A kindness that no one knows about changes two nervous systems and ripples through a city in ways no graph can trace. The proof of a life is not its audience. It is its radiance, felt first by the one inside it. Imagine this. You put the phone in a drawer for an evening, not as a punishment, not as a performance, but as a gesture of respect for the unsponsored hour. The house grows quiet. You light something small, a candle, a stove, a memory. The first few minutes, your mind pauses at the door. Then the air settles. You hear your own footsteps moving through your life. You remember the names of clouds. You taste your dinner. You notice a thought arriving that feels like it was written in a hand older than you. It does not ask to be shared. It asks to be lived. Outside, the world hums. People are dancing in lighted rectangles. There will be time to join them, but not yet. Now you are attending to the one relationship on which all others depend. The relation between your awareness and what it touches. You are the steward of that touch. You have always been. When you return to the screens, return as a person with a center, not a compulsion with a password. Bring your verbs, bring your vow. Let the feed borrow your eyes only when it serves what you have chosen. And when it doesn't, let it pass like weather. The machine will not notice your change, but the room will. Your child will. Your work will. Your sleep will. Your own face in a quiet window will. This is the ultimate truth the feed cannot use because it cannot sell it. The most valuable thing you can give the world is the quality of your attention. And no one can program that but you. What you look at with love becomes more real. What you practice becomes you. Your life is worth the time it takes to live it.